Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about something that's creating quite a buzz, Joe Biden's canceled visit to Africa. Yep, you heard that right. President Biden has postponed his much-anticipated trip to Africa due to Hurricane Milton. While many Africans were disappointed by this news, this situation offers us something far more important, a lesson for African leaders. Biden is staying home to deal with a national emergency, a natural disaster. But here's where things get interesting. How often do we see African leaders doing the same when their countries are facing crises? This video is going to break down Biden's decision and what it means for leadership, especially in Africa. So let's dive into this. Let's start with Biden. He had planned to visit Angola and Germany this week, but with Hurricane Milton speeding toward Florida, Biden made the call to cancel those trips. His message was simple. I need to be here, at home, when this storm hits. He made it clear that responding to the disaster was his priority, adding that he'd reschedule those visits later. Now, this seems like the obvious and responsible choice, right? But here's the real question. Why don't we see more of this in Africa? How many times have we watched African leaders leave their countries in the middle of a crisis? Protests, natural disasters, and civil unrest, yet some of these leaders are on planes, heading to foreign summits, leaving their people in chaos. What does that tell us about how much they value the lives of their citizens? Let's get real here. How many African presidents have flown out for foreign meetings while their countries burned? Too many, if you ask me. Let me hit you with some examples. Before we continue, welcome to Pan-African Lens. If you're passionate about Africa's diverse cultures, rich history, development, and the contemporary issues shaping the continent and its diaspora, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe and join the conversation as we explore these powerful stories together. Let's continue. Remember the EndSARS protests in Nigeria in 2020? Nigeria was in the midst of massive protests against police brutality, and it got violent. Innocent people were killed. What did President Muhammadu Buhari do? He remained mostly silent, and when he did speak, many felt it lacked empathy. He was completely disengaged at a time when the people needed real leadership. Where was he during those critical days? Or take Paul Biya of Cameroon. This man has spent more time abroad than in his own country. During the Anglophone crisis, where violence erupted in English-speaking regions, Biya was reportedly in Europe, far removed from the conflict. While Cameroonians suffered displacement, military crackdowns, and hardship, their president seemed more focused on foreign relations. And let's not forget Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe during the country's economic collapse in the 2000s. Zimbabweans were facing extreme hardships, hyperinflation, food shortages, and massive unemployment. Mugabe, instead of addressing these issues head-on, frequently flew out of the country for foreign summits and personal trips, leaving Zimbabwe to fend for itself. So, I ask you, what's the deal here? Why do so many African leaders neglect their duties when their people are facing national emergencies? Do African lives mean so little to them? Now, Biden's decision to cancel his trip to Africa in the face of a natural disaster sends a powerful message to world leaders, especially those in Africa. It's about accountability. When your people are in danger, you don't abandon them for photo ops abroad. You stay and show leadership. Biden could have easily gone on with his trip after all. He's at the end of his term. But he didn't. He knows that when it comes to crises like hurricanes, the real work begins after the storm. He'll be judged by how his administration manages the aftermath, something that African leaders should seriously take note of. How often do we see that kind of accountability on our continent? And let's be real here. We know that African presidents love their foreign trips. They love to attend summits, hold press conferences, and appear in front of international media. But what does that mean when their people are suffering back home? And it's not just about African presidents flying away during crises. Even when they stay at home, how many times do they actually show up when tragedy strikes? When there's a disaster or a violent event leading to the loss of many lives, Most African leaders don't visit the victims, don't assess the damage firsthand, and don't empathize with their people. They often send deputies or lower-level government officials instead. Take, for example, the Lekki toll gate massacre in Nigeria during the EndSARS protests, or the Ethiopian Tigray crisis. Leaders were largely absent, leaving the people to fend for themselves. So the question is, what is an African life truly worth to these leaders? Let's break down the lessons that African leaders can take from Biden's decision. Stay with your people in times of crisis. First and foremost, a president's job is to lead. When the people are suffering, whether it's due to a natural disaster, economic turmoil, or protests, their leader should be there, on the ground, managing the situation. Think about it. Would you trust a leader who flies out of the country in the middle of a disaster? Optics matter. People aren't just watching what you do, they're watching what you don't do. In today's world of 24-hour news and social media, optics matter more than ever. A leader's absence during critical times speaks volumes about their priorities. What message does it send when a president is seen smiling on foreign trips while citizens protest or suffer? When a crisis hits, the people will remember how their leaders responded. Biden knows that his legacy will partly depend on how he handles national emergencies. African leaders should learn that their actions during crises will either build or break public trust. We've seen leaders like Thomas Sankara and Ibrahim Traoré who set a great example of staying with their people. They reject lavish lifestyles and foreign distractions, focusing instead on their country's development. This is the kind of leadership Africa needs, leaders who are accountable, present, and willing to put the people first. But the politician amongst them only remember their people and fraternize with them during electioneering campaigns. And once they win the elections, they will forget the ordinary citizens until the next election cycle. So, what happens when leaders fail to prioritize national emergencies? You get unrest, distrust, and chaos. Think about it. In countries where leaders are absent during critical times, public trust erodes. People start to question whether their leaders care about their well-being at all. Take Cameroon as an example again. Paul Biya's absenteeism has fueled frustrations, particularly among Anglophones in the Northwest and Southwest regions. His lack of presence during the Anglophone crisis has only deepened divisions in the country. When the people feel abandoned, they lose faith in the government. And once that happens, it's almost impossible to restore. The same can be said about Nigeria's Buhari. His failure to address the EndSARS protests in a timely and empathetic manner has left a lasting scar on Nigerian politics. Even today, many young Nigerians remain skeptical of the government, largely because of how those protests were handled. And let's not forget Mugabe's Zimbabwe, where his frequent absences during crises contributed to the country's downfall. Public disillusionment grew, and it played a role in the eventual military coup that removed him from power. Do African leaders really want to go down that path? Do they want to be remembered as presidents who abandoned their countries when it mattered most? As Pan-Africanists and anti-neo-colonialists, we're pushing for a future where Africa stands tall, united, and truly independent. But to get there, we need responsible leadership. We need leaders who understand that the welfare of their people comes first, above international relations, above foreign summits, and above their own personal interests. Ibrahim Traoré, Assimi Goïta, and leaders like them are showing us what this can look like. They are rejecting the neo-colonial influence of foreign powers like France and focusing on strengthening their nations from within. They are staying close to their people and addressing the real issues, like security, economic development, and political stability. This is the kind of leadership Africa needs more of. Leaders who are accountable to their people and who show up in times of crisis, not fly out. So what's the takeaway here? Biden's decision to cancel his trip in the face of Hurricane Milton offers a simple but profound lesson for African leaders. When your country is in crisis, stay home. Lead, be accountable, and prioritize the lives and well-being of your people. What do you think? Should African leaders learn from Biden's move? Have you seen examples where African leaders have neglected their people in times of need? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I'm curious to hear what you have to say. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay informed on the latest news and analysis on African politics, leadership, and global affairs. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and let's keep pushing for a better future for Africa. Thank you for watching Pan-African Lens. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue celebrating Africa's heritage and discussing its future, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps grow our community and keeps the conversation alive. See you in the next video.